Welcome, everyone, to the first Hockey.org podcast. I'm Adam Rayho, and along with me today is Josh Burke. Topics we're going to be covering today are the injuries that occurred at the Sochi 2014 Olympics, New Jersey Devils and any trades they might make leading up to the trade deadline, Boston Bruins and how they are poised to make another run at the Stanley Cup, which teams might sneak into the playoffs in the final 20 games of the season, and what happened to the Russian Olympic team in the Olympics. First, we're going to start off with the injuries that occurred at the Olympics, and the two biggest names that come to mind for me are John Tavaras and Paul Martin.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger one is the Tavaras one, obviously. I mean, the Islanders, they're not necessarily... I mean, they're out of the playoff race for the most part, but still, if they put a nice run together, they could get there. But, they're not going to do anything without John Tavaras. And if you saw in the news, like, Garth Snow, he's making statements like it's a joke, and, are they going to reimburse me? I mean, they're pissed. And if anybody's going to lead the charge for the Olympians not to go to South Korea in 2018, it's going to be Charles Wang, the owner of the Islanders.
Definitely. And I just think it's fun. Garth Snow definitely is pissed, and he has a right to be pissed. But they were also pissed that Kyle Okposo didn't make the U.S. roster.
Yeah, but now they're probably thankful that he didn't. God forbid he got injured, too. They'd be completely screwed. So, and in my mind, not to go too off topic, but Okposo, I mean, he should have been in. He should have been on that team. He was having a hell of a year, and there was too much grit on the U.S. team. That's just my opinion there.
Exactly. They could have definitely used some scoring. So, but we'll see how soon the Islanders trade Thomas Vanek now, because there's not much reason to hang on to him anymore, unless they think he can carry the team, but he hasn't really been doing that so far. Yeah,
and if you're Garth Snow, you got to think about, you don't want to think that way, but you got to think about next year. You got to think about what can I get for this guy. He's a hot commodity right now. A lot of people want him and need his scoring stuff. But what can I get for him? At least a first round pick and a prospect, or even an NHL ready player.
Exactly. Considering what they gave up to get him to Buffalo.
Exactly.
Well, and the injuries. I mean, you touched on it before. The biggest question leading into the 2018 Olympics will be the NHL participation.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought it was interesting because I was trying to remember from 2010, or even before that. Like, if I don't remember there being this many injuries or this many, let's say, significant injuries with Tavaras and Paul Martin and Matt Zuccarello and Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk even not playing at 100%. So I don't remember there being, maybe just not this high profile of names that were injured, but it's definitely more under the microscope now because of that.
Definitely. And it seems like the players want to continue to play, but the GMs are really the ones who want to put the axe on it.
If I was a betting man, and sometimes I am, I don't think they're going to be in South Korea in 2018. And I think that part of that, too, is, like, I don't know that they would have really been in Russia if it wasn't for, it being Russia. So many NHL players that can go there and playing for their country. But you go to Russia, that part of Russia, too, is just, it's as close as you can get to being not marketable in North America, just because of the time difference. I was obviously one, you too, Adam, who we got up early, we watched the games, but going, you go to South Korea, it's like a 12, 13, 14-hour difference, and, people aren't going to get up in the middle of the night. You're not going to get the ratings. That the only thing that can help the league is getting the ratings, and they're just not going to get it in South Korea.
Exactly. So one other interesting thing I found about Garth Snow's comments was Ken Holland, who is the general manager for the Detroit Red Wings, knew that Datsyuk was going in to the Olympics hurt and really didn't seem to have a problem with it. So just like kind of opposite ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is Datsyuk like a lot of players, has earned the right to do that. And obviously, it was his home country. Holland's not going to come out and say you can't go because you're hurt. I mean, that's going to have to be Datsuk's decision. And thankfully and strangely enough, like Datsuk really, it sounds like he's going to be ready to go for the start of the season, or for the restart of the season this week. But I mean, like I said, I as a general manager and someone who, my job is on the line for my team to perform. And if my best players are not going to be, Garth Snow, I mean, Charles Wang loves him for some reason, but, at some point he's going to have to start producing a little bit more. This is just another season they're going to have to write off. And how many more chances is he going to get? So you got to think from his perspective about job security too.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see which players play for the U.S. and Canada and everyone in the Olympics. So it'll be, I don't know if I'm excited to see college players play again. It'll definitely add some excitement to that sport and make some college players household names of people that you might have never heard of.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I'm not as into that as I should be, but I mean that would have definitely help it, because I'm unfortunately going to be one of the ones to get up in the middle of the night and watch the games. So I'm going to want to know who the players are, and you're going to hear a lot more about it, I think too. And who knows, maybe our college players will finally beat Canada's junior players.
One last thing quickly to touch on with this is it'll be interesting to see how the Russian players react to this, because I know they like playing for their country in the Olympics, and now that the NHL might not allow them, it'll be interesting to see if any other Russian players leave the NHL to go play in the KHL so they can play in the Olympics. I know kind of a far-fetched thought that, I mean, it's still 4 years away, but with the Kovalchuk thing kind of fresh. So it'll be interesting to see if anything like that occurs.
Yeah, I mean, what that really does is it makes all the European teams and Russia instant favorites in South Korea, because you're not, most of them are made up of some NHL players, but not like Canada and the U.S. where it's 100% NHL guys. And the KHL, I'm sure, will stop just to be the high-profile league at that point. So you're going to have Team Russia's going to have a lot of good guys. And, imagine Kovalchuk playing against college kids and junior kids. I mean, he dominates. So,
it wouldn't be fair.
What?
I said it wouldn't even be fair.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. But I think it makes Russia the instant favorite, we'll say, for 2018. But, I think the guys will respect the fact that the league and the owners let them play for their home country and respect their decision in 2018, too. But you never know. I mean, that's the problem with Russian players. Sometimes it's unpredictable whether or not they're going to want to go home. Kovalchuk, Radulov, a couple of those guys. So, yeah.
All right, we'll move to our second topic here. It's the New Jersey Devils, and they need to do something before the trade deadline to make a push for the playoffs. I know you had a couple trades in mind if you want to go over those.
Yeah, I mean, the Devils need to score. There's no question about it. They have, right now, statistically, since January 1st, the best goaltender in the NHL, Corey Schneider. He's got something like a 1.5 around goals against, 960 save percentage. It might be a little high, but it's around there. And yet he's 6-3-4 or something like that. With that sort of those sort of numbers, he should be winning almost every game he plays because he's playing really well. Their defense is playing well, but they just need some depth in scoring. For me, a guy like Thomas Vanek's too expensive for the Devils. They're going to have to give up way too much to a division rival, which is just not going to happen. I don't see him going there. Edmonton has a couple of wingers that I think are intriguing. Edmonton needs to sort of gut some of their team and add some depth and some experience. I think that's exactly what the Devils can offer them.
Yep.
A guy like a Jordan Eberle, his name's been mentioned a couple times. He could bring definitely some instant scoring for the Devils. He'd be a little more expensive than like a Sam Gagner would be. But I think for the Devils, you have to think, because they're going to want like an Adam Larson. and a second round pick, or even next year's first round pick, or some sort of package or conditional picks. They may even want a prospect, maybe not a Reed Boucher, but like a Joe Whitney who's scoring nicely in the AHL. So you got to start to think about the Devils and how is Lou going to go about this? And every time you think you figure him out, you're wrong. He proves you wrong anyway. I don't know. I mean, is he willing to give up an Adam Larson? Is he willing to give up an Eric Jelena? I mean, I don't know. I mean, but those are your chips right there. I mean, John Merrill's untouchable, I think, but those are your chips.
I'd like to think Jelena's untouchable too at this point, and I think that's made Larson a little more open to being moved, because the Devils do have a lot of depth on defense, even with young prospects that still aren't ready for the NHL quite yet.
Yeah, I hope that Jelena is untouchable, but it's how he's perceived in the Devils organization that he's not ready. I mean, he would still be up there. I personally don't agree with that decision. I think the fact that you need scoring and you take one of your defensemen and send him down who has 22 points in like 40-something games, which is, for a defenseman on the Devils, is amazing. Maybe Zidlitsky's the one that's closer to that point-per-game average. But you teach him. You work him into the system. You make him feel confident. Him and Larson were playing great together before Larson got hurt.
Exactly.
Maybe you try that again, It's just a Peter Harold and a Mark Fane, and while they're I'll say Mark Fane is definitely very solid defensively. They're not gonna bring offense for you. It's just not gonna happen. And they can't replace a shot that Jelena has or the vision that Larson may have offensively. So I don't know. I think they need to really start thinking that way a little bit. That they need to get more offense, and they can do it from within, but they haven't really wanted to go that direction, it seems.
It'll definitely be interesting to see what they do. And they definitely need to do something, because the roster now is good, but you need that extra push.
Yeah, I agree, and it's interesting to see, and I don't think I've ever seen Lou be a seller, so I'm not, like, that's why, Jaromir Jagr, everybody's talking about him getting traded. He's not going anywhere. Lou's not going to trade his best player unless he can get five players just as good, and it's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, I don't think Lou knows how to be a seller. So he's going to do something to improve the team now, because they're only 3 points out of a playoff spot. It's not like there's a lot of teams in between them. You got to jump like 5 or 6 teams, but it's not like, they're not looking at it from the same perspective as like the Islanders, where it's like 10, 12 points out, and then they have to get up there. But what do you think about Marty Brodeur? You think he's going anywhere?
I don't see Brodeur moving anywhere. I think like 3 or 4 days ago when the Devils started skating again, there were some quotes in the paper saying that Brodeur, he wants to stay in New Jersey and he doesn't really want to move. He has to talk to management. And I know I talked to you about that, and you said that's Lou telling him to say that. But I don't see Brodeur going anywhere.
I don't know. I don't want to see Brodeur go anywhere. But
that's maybe the biggest thing for me. That's maybe why I don't see him going anywhere, because I don't want him to go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's really tough to wrap your brain around that.
I don't think Marty's going to retire at the end of this year. With that said, he will play somewhere else next year. Not sure where. My guess is a Canadian team somewhere. But he will play next year. I mean, he's not ready to retire. So if he moves on now, and we can get, think of it as sort of a rental situation where you got a player whose contract's expiring. Could we get something for him? And he's a pretty big bargaining chip for a team like a Minnesota or even a Nashville or what was the other team? Chicago's interested just to have some depth in goaltending.
That is true. Another interesting quote from Brodeur that I think this was more towards the beginning of the season when they were talking about trade rumors as well. He said he wouldn't be upset if the Devils traded him because what have they got from him in the past 20 years or whatever he's been playing with the Devils. So he said it'd be nice that if they traded him, he likes the Devils organization, so if they traded him and got something in return that could help the organization in the future, he understands that that's how it might go.
Yeah, and he's been there long enough to know how Lou operates and figure out exactly in the right situation. What can you get from a Minnesota? You got Nito Niederreiter out there who's playing well. Devin Setaguchi, who needs a fresh start. You'd have to have more than that for just Brodeur. Nashville's got some good young wingers. Chicago has more scoring depth than they know what to do with. All things that could help the Devils. And then you're not giving up your future in a Larson or a Jelena or anybody like that. So that's another interesting way the Devils could go. But like I said, I've stopped guessing because every time I figure out Lou Lamoriello, he proves me wrong.
Exactly. So won't spend much more time on that. We'll move on to the Boston Bruins. Look poised to make another Stanley Cup run. But will the injuries on defense hinder them? They have a lot of young defensemen on the team right now.
It's young D are interesting. It's good and bad because a lot of these guys, they're young in the NHL. They've all played at high levels in junior and college. And all this is a different kind of pressure. They've all faced the pressure. It's not like this is the first time they've faced pressure. And for the Bruins anyway, they seem to be thriving now. I know it's regular season, but they seem to be doing real well so far. Like a Dougie Hamilton and Torrey Krug and a couple. I know there's a couple other guys too.
Exactly. Yeah. So Seidenberg's out for the season, and McQuaid's trying to work his way back. So we'll see if he makes his way back. I can't say he's too much of an asset on the back end, but he does have some experience. But I think the big thing that'll really help them out is Zuccarello has been playing out of his mind, especially in the Olympics. All season long for the Bruins, he'll be their rock back there.
Yeah, I actually think the Finns would have had a real good shot, and probably I think they would have beat Canada if he was in goal. He's been lights out. That's something that the Bruins haven't had to worry about in a while is goaltending. After a couple years of having to worry about it, since Tim Thomas and now Tuukka Rask, and they've really been lucky to not have to worry about it from that perspective. And anytime you have Zdeno Chara playing 30 minutes a game, you're going to be okay. But do I think they still make a move for a veteran D guy? Probably.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think they do. I think there's a lot of people out there that are saying like a Andy McDonald from the Islanders who doesn't want to be there, and a Trevor Daley from Dallas has been talked out a lot, and that sort of depends on which way Dallas goes after this break. You don't have a lot of time, but if Dallas loses their next 3 games, maybe they become sort of sellers and try and get what they can get. But I think the Bruins have a team too. I mean, not even their defensemen, but they're like a Chicago too, and why they were in the Stanley Cup final. They're so deep. Any line can score, any line can check, which is, you need that to win in the NHL now.
It'll be interesting to see if they make a move or if they try and stick with the young guys. But I think really either way, they're set to make another deep run into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So speaking of the playoffs, we'll move on to which teams we think sneak into the playoffs this season. I mean, the race in both the East and the West is very tight for the 3 or 4 teams that are currently not in a playoff position. But they're, like you said, the Devils right now sit in 13th place and are 3 points out of the 8th spot. And in the West, Nashville sits in 12th and is only 4 points out of the 8th spot. So it can really go either way. But we'll work with the East first. Who do you see moving up and dropping out, or do you see it staying the same?
I think a team. So right now you have Boston, Tampa, Montreal, Pittsburgh, Rangers, and Philadelphia, and then Toronto and Detroit in those wild card spots. Yeah. You see the way a team like Columbus is playing with Bobrovsky back and playing well. I think Columbus is going to sneak in. They're only a point out right now, but I think they're really gonna solidify themselves a little bit in this offseason. This new start to the season here. And whose spot do I think they're going to take? I think you see a Toronto struggle. I think this goaltender system started well in the beginning, and it really hasn't worked out much since then. And I think that Columbus sort of bumps Toronto out. They're 7 points back of them now, but I think Toronto's going to start to, unless they score 5 goals a game because Phil Kessels and Van Riemsdyk and them are playing amazing, I think that they're gonna have trouble. Yes, they're 10 games over 500, but they have a -4 goal differential, so they're letting up more goals than they're scoring, which is, they're lucky to have a winning record.
Yeah.
What about you in the East? Which one do you think is going to sneak in?
I like your pick with Columbus moving up. I think, I'd love to see the Devils make the playoffs, and I think if they make the right move, they definitely can. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the Capitals make a jump either. They're either hot or cold. They started off the season, I think this year they started off again cold, and then were very hot, and lately they've been kind of not playing so well. But that's another team that'll be interesting to see what moves they make at the trade deadline to better the team.
Washington's an interesting team too. I think with a good goaltender, they'd be probably contending for the top spot in their division.
Yes.
That's the problem. Their goaltenders, for Braden Holtby, who played well in the playoffs a couple of years ago, but really hasn't played well since then. Very inconsistent, we'll say. And Neuvirth comes in and he plays good here, he plays good there, and then he gets hurt. And then you got your Philip Grubauer from the AHL. Yeah, he played okay for a couple games, but then we saw he really wasn't ready for the NHL in a consistent way. They're going to need to look outside the organization in order to get that goaltending, and that's where you have, it's not a large goalie market, but you have a Ryan Miller who's going to come at a steep price, and then you have a Marty Brodeur. It's another place that he could go and thrive. But we'll see how that goes. But I think they have to do some stuff to improve, but if they do, they could definitely make a run. Like I said, they're only a point out right now, so. Yeah.
I could definitely see the Devils swapping with either the Rangers or Flyers, depending on how their last half of the season goes. And I could definitely see Columbus swapping with maybe Tampa Bay. I don't know. Stamkos is returning, so.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able. I think that Ben Bishop's playing okay, and Tampa they just score. They're just going to score a lot of goals, and I think that they're poised to stay where they are. I think they're going to stay in the playoffs. Tampa Bay. I think they're gonna make the playoffs this year.
We'll move on over to the Western Conference, where Minnesota and Dallas currently occupy the wild card spots. And it's kind of been the Wild West this year. They've been tough. They beat up on the East in the beginning of the season. So I don't see many of the teams over there that are in playoff positions losing their spots right now. St. Louis, Chicago, Colorado are all tough. Colorado had a little bit of a tough stretch to end leading into the Olympic break, but I think they'll be fine. And Anaheim, San Jose, and Los Angeles, again, all strong teams. I don't see any of them really suffering to not make the playoffs, which begs the question, you have Phoenix, Vancouver, and Winnipeg, and Nashville on the outside. So do you see any of them moving up and taking a wild card spot, or what do you see going on?
So I'm looking at this, and I'm trying to figure out the team that really intrigues me. And for me, it's Winnipeg. They have quietly been playing very, very, very good hockey. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. Paul Maurice has come in, and the coaching change has had the effect that you'd want it to have. The 2 points out of a playoff spot now. I think they could make a push for it. Pavlik's got to start playing better, and Vander Kane's got to start scoring a little more. But you're starting to see that they're playing a different system, and it's starting to work more, less wide open, a little bit more. We'll say defensively responsible. Not like a trap like a Devils or anything, but definitely better hockey. And I can see a Minnesota without goaltending help really starting to struggle. Like, you can't ask Darcy Kemper to come up and play number 1 minutes. You got Backstrom who's hurt, and then Harding who was playing lights out, and that's why they are where they are, but he's battling with his MS issues, and you don't know when he's going to be back.
Yeah.
That's where a goaltending help could help solidify Minnesota.
I agree with you on that. I see Minnesota dropping out of the playoff spot, which makes me incredibly happy. And I don't see Dallas hanging on.
No, I don't either. And to be honest, I even question a little bit of Los Angeles. I thought Jonathan Quick played great in the Olympics, but I thought he was playing okay before that.
Yeah.
And they're not scoring goals. That's the other thing, is that they are just not scoring goals. They are near the bottom in goals scored in the West. I think they're second to last behind Calgary, and only by 2 goals. But they're not letting up. They play a very tough defensive system, which has helped them, but they need some scoring help too, and that's why they keep talking about the Sam Gagner to LA trade, and I mean, that would only help them, but they need some help up front if they're going to do it. So those 3 teams really could jump out, and you never know. I mean, Phoenix is always somebody you want to write off, and they always end up being right in the picture there. Vancouver, I don't think Vancouver is really going to push much harder. I think they're still adjusting to Tortorella and his system, and it's not, it hasn't quite taken hold. Nashville's an interesting one too. Another team that just sort of likes to hang around like Phoenix and may or may not make a push. I mean, that's going to come down to goaltending too. If Pecorine can get back, or if they get somebody from outside the organization. But yeah, I mean, the West it's tight, and I think it could go a lot of different ways. I think you're going to see at the end of the season something very different than what you see now.
The Wild West, so it'll definitely be an interesting end out there. We'll move on to our last topic now. Team Russia in the Olympics. Definitely a huge upset for the country. Not even being able to go for a medal. What happened to them? They had tons of firepower up front, but in the end, they didn't score any goals. Really what it comes down to.
Yeah, they would score here and there, and nothing timely. They wouldn't score, minus the Fedor-Tutin goal against the Americans, but let's not talk about that yet.
Yeah.
They didn't score, and a lot of it was because they were playing very individual games. They weren't playing a team sort of game. They had a lot of individual talent, and they thought they were going to outscore everybody 10-0 every game. Radulov playing undisciplined a lot of the time. His 2 penalties in the U.S. game led to both U.S. goals.
Exactly. And to be honest, that's a typical Russian player for me. Someone who cares more about himself than the team and would commit 2 penalties like that. But in the other terms, he was one of their best players in the tournament, too. I mean, I haven't looked at his stats, but I wouldn't be surprised if he led the team in points.
Yeah, he was up there. And then you have Kovalchuk, Ovechkin, Malkin. Like, they all sort of played their own individual games. Minus always the team mentality of a Pavel Datsyuk. But it wasn't rubbing off at all on anybody else. And I think that they had a lot of... Russia wanted to make the statement that the KHL players, half of them were KHL guys, pretty much. And they were good enough to play, and they weren't. You gave a lot of people big minutes on the back end, too, who were not able to handle it. A couple people who just, against the Finns, I remember the first goal, he just walked that guy on the faceoff. The defenseman can't let them come inside on that. But, yeah, I think a lot of it was just individuals playing hockey, not a team playing hockey.
Exactly, which, is typical of, I hate to say it, it's typical of the Russians that I feel like they're known more for an individual game.
And it's funny that they're known for that now because, back when they were winning all those gold medals in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was always a team game. That's how they played. I mean, that's the style of play they played was not worrying about the individuals. But, a lot of that's changed, obviously.
Yes, definitely. And one of the more concerning topics for the Russian team was their goaltending going into the Olympics. But I think you saw Bobrovsky played lights out against the Americans, in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bobrovsky was the better of the two goalies, and I am never a fan of... I know it's a short tournament and you want to evaluate, but that's what the preliminary rounds are for. I'm never a fan of rotating your goalies like they did. You pick one and you stick with it. Bobrovsky played really well against the best competition they played so far in the Americans, and he probably should have been the guy from there on. And Varlamov played well when he played, but in the preliminary round. But I think the inconsistencies and the goalies are goalies are crazy. You gotta have their mental game as big a part of it as their actual game, and exactly. Not knowing if you're going to start or not can really screw with you. And I think that showed. They needed some more consistency, and they didn't get it.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure on the team and the players to begin with, and they kind of floundered. So, but I mean, Russia as a country still did well in the Olympics. They won the total medal count, so it's not all a fail over there.
No thanks to hockey, but yeah.
Yeah. So that's our final topic for today. We're going to conclude it this time. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and listening, and see you again next week.
All right. Thanks, Adam.